All right, welcome back. So, last time we really laid the foundational bricks for understanding the cloud. Today we're using those bricks to build the actual skyscrapers. We're going to start deep inside the machine, looking at the cloud's brain, and then we'll zoom way out to see the strategic landscapes, the architectural choices that really define how we all interact with the cloud. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to peek under the hood at the cloud's internal command structure, its central nervous system, really. Then we'll dive into the engine room, virtualization, and see how it's evolved over time. After that, we zoom out to the big picture, the main arenas, public versus private clouds. We'll even touch on some specialized models, and we'll wrap it all up by tackling the most important question: how in the world do you choose the right one? First up, the IaaS control hierarchy. I want you to think of this as the cloud's brain. When you go online and click a button that says, "Give me a virtual machine," and then poof, it just appears. Well, this is the invisible, multi-layered system that makes that magic happen in some massive, far-off data center. So check this out. It's a three-level command chain. Your request first hits the big boss at the top, the cloud manager. It handles all the high-level stuff, like checking your password and making sure your account is valid. Once you're cleared, it passes the order down to a cluster manager. Think of this as a regional manager in charge of a whole rack of servers. Its job is to find one specific machine that has some room. Then it points and tells the computer manager on that machine to get to work. This is the grunt on the ground floor. It gets the final order and talks directly to the hypervisor to actually spin up your VM. This whole delegation is absolutely genius, and it's what allows the cloud to scale to an insane degree without falling apart. Okay, so that's the command structure. That's the brain. But what about the engine, the thing that actually does all the work? That would be virtualization. It is the absolute core of the cloud. But here's the thing you have to remember. It's not just one single technology. It has evolved a lot. Let's walk through the three big generations. Now, before we get into the different ways to do virtualization, we have to ask a basic question. What even is a true virtual machine? Well, lucky for us, two guys named Popek and Goldberg figured this out ages ago. They set the gold standard with three key rules. First, equivalence. The virtual machine has to act exactly like a real computer. No cheating. Second, resource control. The hypervisor, the software running the show, has to be in complete command. And third, efficiency. It has to be fast. Most of the code has to run directly on the physical hardware. These three principles are the bedrock of everything we're about to talk about. And this right here tells the whole story perfectly. We started with full virtualization. The awesome part? You could run any operating system you wanted, no changes needed. The not so awesome part? It was kind of slow because of all the software tricks it had to pull. So that led to para-virtualization. This was a clever idea. What if we just told the operating system that it was being virtualized? It made things way faster. The catch? You had to actually modify the OS, which was a huge pain. Finally, the real game changer arrived: hardware-assisted virtualization. Intel and AMD built the virtualization smarts right into the CPU itself. And that, my friends, was the holy grail. You got the insane speed of para-virtualization and the flexibility to run any OS you want, the best of both worlds. Okay, so we've got the brain and we've got the engine. Now where do we actually run these things? This is where we talk about the arenas. And let's be clear, this is different from things like IaaS or SaaS. We're not talking about service models anymore. We're talking about deployment models. And the two big ones you hear about all the time are, of course, public versus private. So public cloud, this is your AWS, your Azure, your Google Cloud Platform. It feels like magic, doesn't it? This illusion of infinite resources all available on demand. But that illusion is built on one critical concept: multi-tenancy. The best way to think about it is like a giant apartment building. You get your own apartment, your VM, but you're sharing the building's foundation, the plumbing, the electricity, with hundreds of other tenants. And here's the kicker. You have no idea who your neighbors are. And that has some major implications. And this quote just nails the multi-tenancy problem. You simply don't know who you're sharing hardware with. Your company's most sensitive data could be running on the exact same piece of silicon as your biggest competitor. Or worse, a malicious actor trying to pull off a side channel attack. But it's not just about security, it's also about performance. What if you have a noisy neighbor, someone hogging all the network bandwidth? Your app could start to slow down and you'd have no idea why. That's the trade-off. Now, the private cloud is the complete opposite. If the public cloud is a giant apartment complex, the private cloud is your own personal fortress. With a moat and a drawbridge, it's built for one organization and one organization only. You get total control, much stronger security. But Well, building a fortress is expensive. It requires a huge investment up front, and you're limited to the resources you bought. There's no magical, infinite scaling here. And here's a really important distinction you should know. Private doesn't always mean it's in your own building. The classic model is an on-site private cloud, where you own and manage everything yourself. But you can also have an outsourced private cloud. This is where a third party hosts the hardware for you, but it's dedicated exclusively to you. So you still get that fortress-like security, but you don't have to deal with managing the physical data center.
But the world isn't always black and white, public or private. Two other really powerful models have popped up that kind of blend these ideas to solve more specific problems. Let's talk about community and hybrid clouds.
Think of a community cloud as a gated community. It's not one private fortress, but it's not a free-for-all public apartment building either. It's for a specific group of organizations that have shared interests. For example, maybe a bunch of government agencies or a group of hospitals get together and pool their resources to build a cloud that meets their specific security and compliance needs. It's shared, but only among a trusted group.
And then you've got the hybrid cloud. This is the have your cake and eat it too model. The idea is to mix and match. Maybe you keep your super sensitive data in your private cloud, but you use the public cloud to handle sudden traffic spikes or for less critical work. It sounds like the perfect solution, doesn't it? But for this to actually work, its success hangs on one single crucial factor.
And there it is. The absolute #1 challenge of a hybrid cloud is portability. Your applications and your data have to be able to move back and forth between your private and public clouds seamlessly. If they can't, if it's a huge, complicated project to move a workload from one to the other, then you don't really have a hybrid cloud. You just have two separate systems that don't talk to each other. Portability is everything. So this brings us to the most practical part of our discussion. How do you decide? I mean, understanding all this technology is one thing. Applying it strategically to make the right business decision, that's a whole different ballgame. At the end of the day, this is all about trade-offs. There is no single best model, period. Look here. Public cloud, low cost upfront and massive scalability, but you give up control. Private cloud, you get all the control and security in the world, but it's going to cost you a fortune and you're limited in scale. Hybrid seems to offer the best of both worlds, but that comes with enormous complexity. The right choice depends completely on what your organization values most: cost, control, security, or scalability. Ultimately, the entire decision boils down to this one question. For what you're trying to do, what do you value more? The absolute control of your own private fortress, or the near infinite elasticity of the public cloud? There's no single right answer, and as new technologies continue to blur these lines even further, how an organization answers this very question will define not just its cloud strategy, but probably its entire future.